Hello everybody and welcome to the Chapter 9 Problem 3A tutorial. Just going to tell you right off the bat, this top part gave me a little bit of problem because I wasn't sure what they were asking for, but I finally figured it out and it's actually very easy. So just going to take a look at the information that they gave us. They gave us 3 items: machinery with a cost of $62,480 with a purchase date of January 1st, 2007. A 10-year useful life and a 0 salvage value, a forklift with a cost of $26,400, purchased on January 1st, 2014, a useful life of 5 years and a salvage value of 0, and a truck with a cost of $29,392, purchased on January 1st, 2012, with an 8-year useful life with a salvage value of $26,440. So they do give us some other useful information, which we'll find in this line here, and we'll go back to it as we go through the problem. What they wanted you to do is to journal all the entries to include the depreciation using the straight line method. So the very first entry I was a little confused on, only because it had all these lines and it only said to record the depreciation expense on the forklift. But what I realized is that if we start at the beginning, we'll figure it out. So on January 1st, they stipulate that the machinery was retired on January 1st. So if that's the case, we take a look at the machinery line item, and we see that it was purchased in 2007, and it has a 10-year useful life with a salvage value of 0. So what that means to us is that when they retired the machinery on January 1st, 2017, it had actually used all of its 10 years of useful life, which would mean that its value at that time would be 0. So in order to record that, we would go ahead and we would debit accumulated depreciation equipment, because we want to reverse the entry that we have been making over the last 10 years to record the depreciation expense. And then we're going to credit equipment for the full cost of the equipment, so that it basically zeroes out and it takes both the accumulated depreciation and the equipment off of your balance sheet, so that you no longer show it as an asset, because we did retire it and it did have a salvage value of 0. So that goes ahead and zeroes out that entry. The next part was to figure the depreciation expense for the forklift, which we're going to record on June 30th. And the reason we're going to do that on June 30th is because the forklift was actually sold on June 30th. So let's take a look on how to figure the depreciation for the forklift for the first 6 months of 2017, so that we know how much to record to the depreciation expense. So I'm just going to flip over here to Excel, since that was so much easier than trying to write on a whiteboard. So to figure out yearly depreciation for equipment, you take the equipment value, which was $26,400, and you subtract out the salvage value, which in this case was 0. And then you divide that by the number of useful life years. So that would have been 5 for this particular forklift. So the answer you get there is $52.80 in yearly depreciation. However, because we're only doing a half of year's worth of depreciation because we sold it on June 30th, we would need to figure out what that is. So the formula for that is actually the 5280, whoops, sorry about that, 5280 times 6/12, or basically 5280 times 0.5, which gives you 2640 as your half of year's worth of depreciation on the forklift. So if we go back, we debit depreciation expense for the 2640, and we credit the accumulated depreciation for 2640 for that account. And that goes ahead and brings the value of the value of the forklift to the book value, which is the purchase value minus the accumulated depreciation. For the next part of the entry, it's asking to record the sale of the forklift. So we know that we sold the forklift on June 30th. And just to kind of work the problem the same way the gentleman in the videos does, is We know that the equipment value at time of purchase was $26,400 because they've given us that amount right there. And we know that we received $10,560 because they also gave us that information right there. So now we need to figure the total accumulated depreciation and the gain on disposal of assets. So we're going to go ahead and flip back over to Excel so that we can kind of have a running total. And so we've decided that depreciation was $52.80 a year. So the equipment was bought in 2014. So at the end of that year, it would have been the purchase price minus the first year of depreciation, which comes to, so then for 2015, I'm just going to go ahead and stick the other years in there so we don't have to keep coming back to that. It would be that amount minus the $52.80, which gives us a value of $15,840. So we take $15,840 minus the $52.80, and that gives us a value of sorry about that, I got minorly confused by my notes. That gives you a value of $13,200, and then $13,200 minus the $26.40 because we only did a partial year. Whoops. And we'll figure that value later. But what we were really looking for was the total amount of depreciation that we've paid. So we had 1, 2, 3 years of $52.80. And then a half a year at $26.40. And that gives us a total of $18,480 in total depreciation that we've booked over the last 4 years. So we just switch back to our problem, and we're going to go ahead and put that in as a debit because we need to reverse the accumulated depreciation that we've recorded over the years. So now to basically figure the gain or loss on the sale of the disposal of plant assets, we're going to take the $10,560, which is the cash that we received, plus the depreciation minus the original value of the forklift. And that's going to give us a gain on the sale of $2,640, which we then record here. For the next part of the problem, they wanted us to record the depreciation expense on the truck. So we have the truck here, and we're going to go ahead and I'll show you how we figure depreciation on that. So for the truck, we'll go back up here. The purchase price of the truck was $29,392, and we have to subtract out the salvage value, which is $26.40. And then we divide that by the useful years, which is 8. And that gives us a value of $33.44 depreciation per year. So with that in mind, we can go ahead and go back to our problem, and we're going to go ahead and record debit depreciation expense for the $33.44, and then credit accumulated depreciation for $33.44 as well. Now we just need to record the sale of the truck, and again it's very similar to the sale of the forklift. The only difference is because we are discarding the truck rather than selling it, we lose the entry to cash because there is no cash actually recorded on this account. So again, we would start with the equipment. We already know that we paid $29,392 for it. So we're going to go ahead and put that in our credit column. And then we're going to go back and figure the accumulated depreciation on this equipment. So we'll kind of erase what we have here. So in 2012, we're going to take the initial value of the truck and minus the $33.44, which would give us a total of $26,048. And then in 2013, we're going to take $26,048 and minus the $33.44. then in 2014, going to go ahead and run through these calculations really quickly. That way you're not waiting for me. So that leaves us with a value in 2017 of $12,762. And so we need to know the value of the property minus all of the depreciation. And if you'll give me just a minute, I totally lost my train of thought. Okay, sorry about that. And then we would subtract one more year for 2017. What we are trying to accomplish here is to find the total accumulated depreciation that we paid over the life of the vehicle. So it would be, for 2012, it would be the $33.44, the same for 2013, the same for 2014, same for 2015, the same for 2016, and the same for 2017. So that gives us a total of $20,064 that we have paid in depreciation expense on this, or we have accumulated as depreciation on this particular vehicle. So we would go ahead and enter that as a debit so that we could get rid of that entry on our balance sheet. So then you take the difference between $29,392 and $20,064 to find out what the loss was when they went ahead and discarded the truck. And in this case, it works out to be $9,328. Hopefully I was able to answer any questions that you might have on how to work this problem. If not, please feel free to leave me a message and I will try to explain it as best that I can. Thanks for your time and happy computing.